All right, so it's coming up on 4 o'clock in the morning here. I am at Panther Junction, and well, the rains have passed by. Last night when I went to sleep, if you checked yesterday's video compilation, there was no talking, there were no words for all the things I saw. And now here we are waking up on a day where supposedly there was not going to be any rain, and it's not even 4 o'clock in the morning. The sun rises in 4 hours. Yeah, 4 hours. And so what I'm going to do is head towards the Rio Grande Village area of the park, which I'm hoping is still kind of warm. And right here it's 63 degrees. But normally under these conditions, especially with rain for several days, I would have heard frogs at night while I was driving. I would have seen little tadpoles and frogs at night on the road. You'd see all the things that were waiting to consume them. Of course, it's 63 degrees right now, so it might be a little cool to catch all of the activity, but you'd be surprised, and maybe you will be surprised. Let's see what we're going to see today. Hey, real quick, just to clarify, I meant we would see toads on the road. I guess toads are what normally come out of the dry environment, and frogs are what stay in the wet environment. I'm not sure, but check this out. We've got something up ahead. I think it's a roadkill. So if you could see that, I'm sure you could. It's a pretty healthy size garter snake. And it's a shame to see it as a roadkill. But stay tuned, because I'm sure that I'll be firing this up to show you what else we see along the way. I almost forgot to mention that I stopped at Panther Junction, figuring that I would be able to kind of use their facilities and all that. I didn't really have to go, thankfully, because they have a power outage in the Panther Junction vicinity. I don't know if the residential area has their power out. It looked like it because everything was dark out there. But whatever storm just came through that was, able to manifest out of a 0% chance of rain definitely did a number. There was standing water on the road, as I think you saw on this video, driving out of the Glen Spring Road. And this pavement all looks recently damp. In other words, this isn't from the rain that happened the other day. This is from today's rain. So it's about 4:05. This is just kind of the way it is. I didn't plan to wake up and get going this early. It's just that this apparently is how it was supposed to happen. I even had a feeling that just in case something like that happened, I wanted to prepare ahead of time. So I tore down my chair and my table, and my cot already had tore itself down, and I basically put a few things away that I knew that I would have trouble grabbing in the morning, in the fog of having just woken up, under the pressure of just having heard a gentle rolling amount of thunder from a not so far away distance. And that's exactly what happened. I woke to the sound of thunder. It wasn't quite too far away, and I ended up getting everything packed up almost just in time. I had to throw the tent in the front seat here with me, and that was basically in the passenger seat. And that was basically because the tent poles for some reason wouldn't come unattached, and I couldn't route them out of the tent. So I had to readjust everything afterwards, after the rain had stopped. And then basically I did a double check to make sure I hadn't left anything behind, and that was about it. So here we are, like I said, on this journey. I'm trying to pay attention specifically to what's on the road. So far, we're not seeing a whole lot of anything, not even bugs. There are occasional bugs, but it's nothing like after any kind of a rainy season that or rainy period of time that I've experienced out here in the past. So far it's quite quiet. Although we did see one nighthawk. I saw the same nighthawk driving now back on the way back towards Glen Spring Road, because again, I'm going to go to Rio Grande Village. But that one nighthawk used to be 100 nighthawks all over the road. And some people might not believe it, except for those who have taken any kind of a trip with me and ridden along at these unusual hours, such as the ones that I'm showing you right now. I want to show you something that I've shown in another video, but one of the things that you can see from the roadway is sometimes wolf spiders. Check this out. Let's see if you can see it. Pretty cool, huh? So wolf spiders have very reflective eyes, and I used to think there was all kinds of broken glass all over this roadway, but it turns out it was just a bunch of wolf spiders, which made a lot more sense. So stick around, let's see what else we're gonna see. You just missed it, but there was a fox, a gray fox that crossed the road just in front of us, but there was also something I saw behind us. Let's go see if we can find it. right, it's 6:15 in the morning, so we're about an hour and 45 minutes from sunrise. I just passed by Panther Junction again. This time the power was on, so I was able to make use of their facilities, and not really sure what to do. I wanted to get some additional sleep after having been awakened by the sudden rainfall that was unexpected, but a lot of interesting things happened since that point in time. For an example, the first stop that I made at Panther Junction, I forgot to mention it earlier, but once again I got to see a green fireball meteorite, which was really cool. And then I ended up driving to the Rio Grande Village side of the park, and I saw 2 toads, a grand total of 2 toads, plus the roadkill garter snake that we saw, and the nighthawk. So very unusual in terms of the number of animals, including insects. I'm just now seeing an insect that was flying across the roadway. I've seen maybe 2 mice or little rodents of some sort. In the past, you would see those crossing the road pretty much every mile or every 3 miles. And we also got down to a temperature of about 73 degrees down at the side of the park where I saw the toads. So I figure we'll drive towards Santa Elena Canyon. I don't know that we'll make it there, but we will drive in that direction to see what happens with the temperatures and with the animals, based on what has happened here in the park with regard to the rainfall. So things are a little bit in disarray today. Again, it's October 25th. So that means I've been running a continuous mile nonstop daily for 24 days. Oh, it's been challenging. Today though, I was able to run on pavement, so I definitely was able to pick up the pace. I partly feel like I sped things up because I was concerned with the wildlife that I might encounter on the Burrow Spring Road. One of the last times when I was out here, I was running in the desert. It was early in the morning. It hadn't rained. It was a much different set of circumstances. And it turns out that there was a black bear that was on the side of the road that appeared to want to have ambushed me. And I was lucky that I saw the bear before it decided to make a move, and that it saw that I saw it, And when it saw that I knew it was there, it became suddenly intimidated, and it ran off really fast. A lot faster than I can run, that's for sure. Well, today started out just like every other day with some kind of unforeseen adventure that I wouldn't have been able to plan for. And so instead, I just kind of rolled with it. And the way yesterday went, because the day before had rained for the whole day practically, the next day, which was yesterday, which was the day that I was going to go without talking about some of the experiences, the next day, yesterday, I was able to let most of my gear dry out because the sun was kind of like today. It was a blue sky, full sun type day. And it took several hours to dry out the different incremental layers on my tent. For an example, the tarp or the fly that goes over it, the rain fly, that took a while to dry. And then when I removed that, then the next layers, like the tent itself and then the tent floor, could begin to dry. But it was a challenging situation because the ground was so saturated that everything that was on the ground was going to remain damp for most of the day. And right towards the end of the day, things were almost all the way dry, and there was a 0% chance of rain in the forecast. So I took the rain fly off, and I didn't want to leave the tent up anyway if it was going to rain, because if we ran into a situation where we got rain today, then I would have to try and figure out how to pack my wet tent. And nobody really wants to put away a wet tent, especially if you're going to be camping another day. And so I was unpleasantly surprised when I heard thunder at about 3:30 this morning. And when I looked up, because I had the fly off, I could see no stars. I could only see clouds. And almost as if by synchronicity, the sky flashed blue. And so then I got to hear the thunder afterwards, the thunderclap. But the whole point is that I woke up to thunder, and I basically had to rush to pack away all my stuff. So you can see some of my gear. It's a little bit aloof, or just, it looks like it might be blocking the view, really, is all there is to it. And that's kind of how things are going to be for a little while. But in spite of all that, I was able to drive to the Boquillas end of the park and see, not only did I see 0 lizards, I saw 2 toads. I didn't see any snakes. I saw 1 nighthawk. I didn't see any owls. I didn't see any bats perusing the road. I saw very few insects. And then I was able to drive all the way back down towards Santa Elena Canyon, where I took a detour real quick and put in my daily mile. And I was able to run that much faster, like I said earlier. I think it was in the 11-minute time frame, which to me that's pretty good. One of my best times is just barely under 11 minutes. So like 10 minutes and like 50 seconds or something like that. Whatever it is, 11 minutes is about the fastest I've gone before. So running on this road, doing almost my fastest run was for an entire mile nonstop. And then being upbeat about this, having woken up at about 3:30 in the morning. Here it is, 9:24. So barely 6 hours have passed, and I'm still going. I'm going to go to Santa Elena Canyon, and then after that point in time, I'm going to need to make a decision in terms of what I want to do for the rest of today. The original plan was to stay put as much as possible. Yesterday, I ate the last of all of my food, which was basically some watermelon, a banana, and an orange. And so today I have zero food starting out. I only have the 2 water containers that I filled up yesterday. So I'm still good on water. I'm probably going to go to the Cottonwood store out towards Studi Butte, and I'll probably find some fresh fruit or produce or something there. But even that is something that I don't necessarily need to do. If I wanted to, I could make it all the way back to San Antonio before I ever needed to have something to eat. So I've gotten my hunger pangs under control to the point where they're not like debilitating. I've gotten my sleep pretty much down to a science. The only unanticipated situation was sleeping in the wild and sleeping with camping gear set up a certain way, knowing that I would have to take it down if it started raining. I should have just taken my camping gear down as soon as everything was done yesterday, as soon as it was as close to dry as possible, and I should have just slept in this makeshift camping setup. But I wouldn't have had the experience that I had, and I wouldn't have been able to have gotten up and had such a reason to go from point A to point B. And so we wouldn't have gotten to have all of the insight that we garnered from traveling back and forth throughout the park this morning. So if you're watching this channel by subscription, if you haven't subscribed, please, I hope that you subscribe. I hope you at least click on the thumbs up, maybe enter some information into the comments. Let me know what you liked or didn't like, so that we can at least fine tune what it is that we're doing here. But what I know that I'm doing for a fact is trying to showcase what we're seeing and what we're not seeing. And during this point in time, even though we've seen on my clips a lot of wildlife, there's a tarantula crossing the road. There was a big that's exactly what I was going to say, is that even though there are clips of wildlife, there are certain things that are a little bit absent from our daily what would we call it? Our daily participation of what we normally would see in a situation or in a place like this. And that's not even the right way to phrase it. I just was having a lot of trouble deciding whether I wanted to try and show you that tarantula or not, but why wouldn't I? The only thing is, it's a small distance from this car, so we'll see if I can. So I wasn't able to catch it after all, but it was a joy to see that not only did we see a tarantula, or not only did I see a tarantula, but also it had made it across the road. In many instances, some of the things that are around here end up as roadkill. This isn't a roadkill, but check this out. Look like a giant poop of some kind. Anyway, there are signs of life, so I'm not trying to say there's no wildlife or anything like that, but the purpose of this channel is to mention the decline in wildlife and to kind of document it in a way that it's a little bit more heartfelt than just seeing it in some kind of a book, I guess, after the fact. You see, I'm not an educator, and I'm not trying to take the place of an educator. However, we are all able to have unique perspectives of certain things because of whatever endeavor it is that we take on. And for me, I like to take on visiting this park as frequently as possible because it's a place where I normally would go to recharge. And lately, I've been having some pretty good difficulties getting back in shape, getting my health back. And so I'm out here doing everything I can to try and recover. And I've mentioned this to quite a few people who I would think know me, and at the same time, when I try to talk with them about these things, I don't get any kind of a feeling like there's a real positive support group, I guess, support network even. You know, in fact, I have several groups that I belong to where I've reached out to these groups and on both individual and in group situations, and I don't hear back anything from these people, not even what's a good word? Not even with the veneer of the illusion of trying to respond to whatever it is that was being asked. Whether I had sent a text message to a group or a video message to a group or been at an actual group. And in fact, that's the only time when I can get real responses is when we have an actual gathering. But even then, I've noticed that some of our elders, they'll ask you a question like, hey, how have you been? How are you doing? And then while you're telling them the story, and the story could only be like a few words into the story, that person will start looking down at their phone. They don't really care about how you're doing. So my question is, why are they even asking? So here I am at a place where I don't have to worry about the one-way energy stream of positivity that I'm giving out not being reciprocated with any kind of a recharging restorative energy. And so in that regard, I'm able to just charge up with the power of the sun. You can see the sun. It's right over here, right over my shoulder. And once again, I'm catching sunrise as it happens. Once again tonight, I know I'm going to be catching sunset as it happens. And yet, here I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. Where does all this energy come from? Where does all this childlike enthusiasm come from? Is it because I don't answer questions that are sent to me? Is it because I am hostile in terms of how I'm trying to ask questions to people? Is it because I'm unnatural? Actually, I think I'm all natural, just like all of us are. And some people who are on this spectrum where they talk about spirituality, law of attraction, they'll call people who are not joyful the inorganic ones, because a lot of people are eating processed food all the time. I believe you can eat as much processed food as you want, and your heart and spirit can still be positive. Not everyone, just because they're eating certain things, are turning into fear-based, angry, non-responsive, inorganic things. We're all just people going through an experience. Some of us are learning at different rates. The information I present here is because I'm having difficulties communicating with even my own family about some of these concepts that should be pretty easy to discuss. And I think that they're not easy to discuss ever since we've gone through a generation of not having any of our grandparents anymore. Well, our parents are the grandparents now. And our parents were the ones who were supposed to have either continued carrying the torch or to put that fire out and start a new chapter. But what they're doing is both. They're carrying the torch, but it's not lit. That's my interpretation of what I'm seeing throughout this journey. And it's not something that I'm pointing out because I want to put someone in a bad light. It's something I'm discussing. And I'm discussing it here in public because, well, where else am I supposed to have these conversations? I can go to therapy and say the same thing, but I don't have time for that. I'm going to real therapy. I'm actually doing, let's call it, instead of electroshock, let's call it solar charge therapy. I'm going through solar charge therapy right now where I basically have to have the wherewithal to drive with precision and to be able to anticipate that there might be wildlife, and also to communicate a message to you. And that message is, there's hardly wildlife. There's hardly any wildlife. Waving to a car that's just passing by. You couldn't see it, but my hand was. Anyway, the whole point is, I'm seeing more people. I'm seeing more. You saw the clip from yesterday, right? The one where I don't talk at all. How many people did you count? How many cars did you count? And how many times can you think that these people went to take on a hike and actually paid so much attention and spent so much time there because they wanted to be there? How many of us are just riding along with other people and enjoying an experience that maybe has nothing to do with what our own persona wants? Here in this park, I've brought many visitors to this park, and there are several people who they didn't want to be here at all. They enjoyed it, but they really weren't in enjoyment with themselves to begin with. And so they were at unease no matter where we were in this park, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how fortunate we were to be able to miss the flash flooding, no matter how lucky we were to not get attacked by, a bear or a mountain lion, no matter how fortunate we are, there will be people who are always continually upset, demeaning, and demoralizing one another. And some of that comes in the form of bullying, and some of that comes in the form of the silent treatment, which is something that's characteristic of many bullies. So a lot of people use terms like narcissism, energy vampires, this, that, and the other. These are all just terms. How we take them in our mind is basically up to ourselves. So if I'm discussing people that might have tendencies that are described as narcissism or as an a-hole, as people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and then they're just, enjoying talking about people behind their back, there's something wrong with that. That's not a joy-based mentality. And that kind of energy, it's something that gets absorbed by the people around those negative people. So really, the people we want to try to isolate and keep from our own selves are negative people, but the truth will set you free from negativity. The communication opportunities that you keep giving to all of these people will keep putting things on their plate. You saw the weather that came at me. You saw in this video the things that I had, the hardships that happened that were almost unprecedented. But again, you saw me succeed. So there's a balance and a counterbalance to all of the things that are swinging back and forth throughout the universe. And the only thing you have to do is try to find a way to ride the ride in a place of happiness. There's this band called Creed, and they have a song called My Own Prison. And then the song talks about, it sounds like a kind of a lowly, starts out like real kind of morose, and the guy's talking about he's created his own prison. This is my prison. My prison is I get to enjoy all of the nation, if I so choose, in this steed. And in this vehicle, my prison, I'm able to actually use this as a mobile sleeping, hotel if I want to. I'm able to use this as it's a transportation that'll get me to almost any place, paved or unpaved roads. This vehicle is like a mini tank. It's amazing. And so I have this desire to see wildlife, and so I'm in my own prison, my earthly prison. And all I can say is, even in my home-based prison, which has a lot of sentiment that's based around nature, I don't feel like I'm locked up. I'm not locked up. I'm having a good time. So how can someone having a good time express tendencies of ill health? Check it out. The road's closed because of the flood, because of the rain. Check it out. So you've got to love the irony. I basically said this road would get me anywhere. I mean, this car could get me anywhere. And then, of course, the road was closed, so can't get me to places where the road is closed like that. However, if there were no gate there and the water was a little bit lower, then it might have still been passable in a vehicle like this, depending on the actual stream. So with all of the rambling in mind, mostly because I'm trying to focus on driving and tell a story, the way that my perspective is, especially having interacted with many educators and especially being friends with many parents who probably don't want to feel the same way that some of us felt as children. And as we continue to share this dream where we're able to create our own prisons, where we're able to form camaraderie with one another, to share in the spirit of positive change, positive vibration, positive energy, where we're able to do that, for whatever reason, many of our parents and educators are locked in, fully locked in, to simply not discussing these things as passionately, as vehemently as we should be. It should be an outrage to come to a place like this and only have nonstop cars driving by. It should be an outrage to not have some of the same cars be at least NPS volunteers and or employees who are actively taking a daily assessment of what kind of impact is occurring to the wildlife. It should be an outrage that our climate is as challenging as it is and that it's being caused by us. But the only thing we can do is have more and more summits and meetings and groupthink where we pass out the same bottled water and don't really do anything even marginally different. And most of that is because we don't think of all of the options that need to change as soon as we align with positive energy. Pretty much everything has to change, probably including how we actually tend to ourselves. And so for many of us, we don't really tend to ourselves. We defer all of the work to the system. And the system is basically doctors, educators, and all of the people who make these laws, the law that we continue to be able to select from. And if the law constantly tells us that we need to mask up when it's time to mask up, well, all of those masks are going to get sold, but nobody has put together a law that's very effective in terms of what do we do with all the masks after the fact. I see them blowing around throughout this desert. I see them in neighborhoods. They're a little bit less easy to find now because maybe of the time frame that has passed since our the main COVID situation hit. But if you really, really look around, it's not just these one-time convenience masks that are mucking it all up. It's all of the one-time convenience type attitude and approach that we put into the entirety of the system. And I know, again, I'm not the boss of you. I'm not the leader. All I am is a guide telling you what I'm seeing here and what I'm not seeing. Several years back, I was able to bring my mom and stepfather to this place. I saw a cottontail rabbit on this turn that I was on right here. It's got a guardrail, and we saw a rattlesnake that afternoon when we were driving on this road. And I was going to mention that. So a rattlesnake around the corner, cottontail, which we just saw. That's the first living rabbit or roadkill. That's the first rabbit that I've seen in this park so far. The last 2 times in this video series that I mentioned a rabbit, the first one was a roadkill, and the second time you probably saw when I was talking about the vulture, I think that was a rabbit roadkill. So there are not many, and those were outside of the park, by the way. Inside of the park, there are not that many signs of life that would have been formerly abundant. And we know that there are cycles. Of course there are cycles. But this cycle that we're in right now is trending in ways that are a little bit different, a little bit more substantial, and they're a little bit more pressing in terms of how we should be discussing these situations. So I hope that you're tuning in for that reason, and I hope that you're trying to find a way to share this insight as well with other people in your own words, with your own experience. It's possible that West Texas is just dried up. It's possible that all of Texas, throughout all the areas that I've gone to regularly, have all just dried up, and somehow the fortune has been redistributed in some other area. It's probably so. It's probably that way. And at the same time, I want to point out that the problems that I'm seeing in my neck of the woods are just being exacerbated by the problems we have just basically having communication with our even with our parents. You know, the parents of my generation tend to do things like green up lawns and spray pesticides and weed killers on things, and all of those poisons are things that they continue to subscribe to. I would continue to subscribe to those things too if all I wanted was the satisfaction of being able to have a conversation with my parents, with my own parents. I don't want the satisfaction of just having a conversation with my own parents. I want to have a communication. I want to be able to communicate with my loved ones. It doesn't matter, you know, if they're my parent or not. To be able to communicate all of these situations is something that people will tell me, well, you should go to therapy to talk about these things. Therapy is not going to help the situation. Therapy is not going to point out all of the masks that we're finding throughout these places. Therapy is not going to tell us, hey, the temperatures were hotter for this amount of time, which is exceptionally longer than it used to be hot, or the temperatures got more frigid than they did the last time, which was exceptionally beyond what they got to the last time. They're not going to talk about those things because they want to continue celebrating. And as we're approaching, again, it's October 25th, and as we're approaching these holiday months, where once again, just like last year, I put these communications out there saying, hey, if our family wants to participate, why aren't they participating? The last thing I want to do is get together for a shill celebration about something when we can't even celebrate even the basic things in life that we're trying to accomplish with one another. Instead, we don't communicate, we don't support one another, and basically we continue to try to discount anyone who doesn't want to talk about the same poisons and weed killers and pesticides and doctors' appointments as general sick society wants to talk about. That's how I feel. Those are the things I thought about yesterday, and I couldn't really come up with a better way to say it. I hope this makes sense. So this is what I got for 20 bucks. I got back a couple of bucks in change. The cash machine was down. Thank goodness I had 20 bucks on me. All right, so it's 11:15 and I just stopped at the Cottonwood store. I had literally $20 on me, and I spent just about 20 bucks. I got one bag of ice, one container of blueberries. The blueberries were like $6, and one package of grapes. And the grapes were sold by the pound. All of the three things combined came out to about $17 or $18. And then while I was checking out, I also got to meet with my friends, Rob and Angie, who happened to be at the Cottonwood at the same time. And then Rob helped me to try to push a Jeep to jumpstart it, but for some reason the Jeep didn't jumpstart on the first try. And then Rob and Angie took off. They had they had finished their shopping, and then another individual who I don't know his name, but another individual stopped to shop at the Cottonwood, and so the guy who was having trouble starting his car, we pushed him one more time, and just like that, we got it started. So I worked up a sweat though, because it was kind of hard to put in that much like physical exertion right then. And now we're making our way back up to the basin, and it's already 70 degrees outside down here at the lower level. It was colder. It was colder earlier. It was about 63 or something like that. And that was a little bit too cold to see any snakes until they started waking up. So I got my run in, and I expected to see some kind of snake. I did see a roadkill, which you're going to see on the videos. And so here we are entering the park again. Stay tuned. So I don't know why I kept saying that I woke up at 3:30 this morning. I looked at the video while I started to compile it, and in the video I clearly show my watch at 2:21 in the morning or so. And so the point is that I woke up at like 2:20, and it's currently 3:30. It's a little bit warm outside in the sun, so I'm sitting in a shady spot with the windows open. And it's coming up on 4, sometime around 4 or 5 is when I'm going to have my first meal of the day, or at least at or after that point in time, I should say, is when I'm going to have my first meal, and that's going to be consisting of blueberries and grapes. And I'll have to have enough for tomorrow. Normally in the past, I would carry a little bit more cash. I had to use it pretty quickly, because, as I've said, there are certain anomalies where I'm not receiving checks in the mail, certain things like that on time. And so I'm having to put off some of my actions. But thankfully, I had an emergency 20 laying around, and that, as you saw, got me exactly what I have. And so I couldn't have gone and feasted much more if I wanted to have some healthy produce. So grapes, blueberries, and some ice to help me to keep that stuff nice and refreshing through tomorrow. That's when I'll be headed back home, and it's really about it. We'll have to see what we see today. When I talked earlier, I mentioned that I hadn't seen any snakes, and I might have misspoken. We definitely saw a garter snake that was a roadkill, and then later on we saw a rattlesnake roadkill. But the point is, we haven't seen any living snakes, and also I haven't seen any lizard roadkills, and I saw one lizard yesterday that barely made an appearance. So I'm thinking that the reptiles are exceptionally rare right now, mostly because they're probably coming up short on food, as with everything else. But some of them were coming out yesterday, hopeful, because there was plenty of water, and they'll probably still be coming out today and tonight. So who knows? I might check out the roadways one more time tonight, but overall, the staying put tactic of enjoying the park and showing you the wildlife that I see from one spot has been pretty successful, I would say. I hope that you've enjoyed this series. There'll be one more video to this series which documents tomorrow as I leave the park, and I hope that you enjoy the entire series. If you do, or if you enjoyed one particular clip more than the others because of the style of the presentation, please be sure to click on the thumbs up and enter some comments. Definitely consider subscribing if you're interested in places like Big Bend National Park or any other place It's a refuge to wildlife and nature. And either way, I hope that you're enjoying the journey. So even after the amazing rainfall, check out these flowers. Hope you could see those. Even after that amazing rainfall, there's more storms on the horizon over here in the Boquillas area. Check it out behind me. I don't know if you can see the clouds, but even after that, normally I wouldn't be able to stand outside the car on an evening like this where there was formerly such rich, abundant wildlife. Right now, the most abundant thing is evidence of our intrusions, our interruptions, like I called it when I was playing my music in the desert. It was an interruption to the sounds that were out there. If you listen here, you can hear birds. Listen. I think we stirred up some quail. So I've got a site tonight in the basin, and I just drove through. I hope it's a peaceful night there. A lot of people have some ginormous celebrations. I know that I was one to do that in the past also, and I know that we're all on our own journeys. So for that reason, I know that we can all be kind of stuck in a rut where we keep doing the same things over and over. I have a feeling that some families have stopped celebrating together because there's almost a shamefulness about it, about the having maybe a feeling of not having really worked for all of it. Even the beautiful spirited vehicle that I have it's not something that I feel like I did anything to be worthy of having received it. You know, there are things that I have done and I haven't received anything for it, and I didn't expect anything, but there are things that I did for money and that I didn't receive payment for the work that I did. And I've shown you that in this video series. It ties directly to Big Bend and the hotel system that's here, and why someone like me can find themselves, someone who's telling the truth can find themselves on almost on a list, you know? And I know everyone's going to say, well, yeah, you know, me too. I've gone through those things. We all have. We all know what it feels like. And so to perpetuate that and to say that something is something other than what it is basically bearing false witness. And I think there are plenty of anomalies here that should allow us to pause and consider. I just got bitten here by something. That was the first insect that hit me. To be able to pause long enough to actually maintain train of thought and understand, we should see a hawk circling, some vultures. We should see some vultures. The bats should be emerging right now. But then you have to stop and think, well, where are the insects? Where are the things that would sustain that life? And so all around us is evidence of all kinds of different things, including the flowers that I started out with. The flowers should have corresponding insects on them. I believe that just saying these things, just as matter of fact as I'm saying them, is causing some people insecurity. And because of that insecurity, I've been faced with bearing the burden of having made people feel bad. And I never intended to. All I wanted to do was show this. Check this out. Wanted to do it in a manner that was almost uninterrupted, where I was at ease. Now, there were many situations that occurred that could have dampened my spirits as well as myself. But as you saw, I completely enjoyed all of the circumstances I was in. That's not to say that I'm thrilled to have equipment break on me or to have things like adversities occur. It's basically to say that I can do without, and I can do without to the point where I can see that some things are just going to be having to be repeated. Like for us to come out with electric vehicles this late in the game, just as an example, why aren't we refurbishing with existing parts and maybe even 3D printing assistance? Why aren't we just tending to all the cars that are in the car graveyards globally? All the vehicles, whether it be something like this that I'm driving or a bicycle or something like that, but standing out in this place of solitude for me has been less rewarding, more so when I bring people that are even more panicked than myself. And I'm not panicked. I'm just aware. And I'm aware that we can have a pleasant experience through the things that are unfolding around us globally, or we can have an experience where we simply do not help one another. And in so doing, we lock up our opportunities to succeed. Today, I helped someone jumpstart their vehicle. At first, with the assistance of a friend who I used to talk with quite often. And through a mutual friend, I asked to have a mutual friend contact me, because this lost friendship, all lost friendships, it's kind of like losing the bats suddenly, or losing the tarantulas all over the road that used to be all over the road, or losing the scorpions, whether it be the most amazing rock band ever, or whether it be the insect. Or is it an insect anyway? The point is, loss is loss. And for many of us who can't ever understand what loss is, it's because we've feared things enough to not ever really truly love something. I love this place. I love to see it healthy. I love to see you healthy. Therefore, shouldn't I love to see myself healthy? So a lot of these self-control aspects that I talk about, that I seemingly call the truth, can cause people to become insecure. Usually, it's because there is something that someone feels bad about. They don't want to talk about it. There's a shameful aspect to being wrong sometimes. That's how we were raised. We were raised on a scoring system where teachers could call me and say, "You didn't get 100 on this paper. You couldn't have." And they did it because of whatever reasons that they might have done in a school where I wasn't quite like all the other children. All of these things can happen, and they can happen to cross your path in the level of conversation that either furthers your ability or sets you back. So I hope I'm not setting you back by touching on these nerves. I'm doing it as compassionately as I can while standing here trying to contain myself while seeing more and more vehicular activity and hearing more and more vehicular activity than I potentially might see in the form of actual wildlife that's native to this place. So for the survey that is sent to me about how I enjoyed my experience, I totally enjoyed it. I enjoyed my experience. And at the same time, it felt compromised because it felt like I was just camping on a highway where the people were the priority and the animals were second-class citizens. I know what it feels like to be that. There's not a chance that I'm going to consider animals second-class citizens. Neither should you. What we hate is generally ourselves. And when we can't touch on those nerves, yeah, maybe a therapist can help, but really, just be honest with the most important person to be honest with. That's yourself. I hope that this information made sense. This is kind of my signing off from Big Bend National Park, even though tomorrow or sometime during the course of tonight, I will leave this park. And so I'll probably have a little compilation that shows the exit strategy when it comes to my communication attempts to raise the living. And, you know, that's my place in the universe. Everyone else has their own place. I honor your place. I also have to suggest there are things that we need to look into, and it's very difficult to hold my phone out in front of me like this. I should have gotten a selfie stick or something like that, but it takes a lot of self-control and just sheer will to do it, just like anything else that's fun to do. So some things apparently are either not fun to me anymore because it looks so bleak on the horizon, or someone needs to step in, and help out. So I hope you can help. That's what this series was about. I hope that our families learn to start living together and enjoying these days, whatever may come of the future. How we treat each other now is the most important. So until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff. And like I said, stay tuned for the on.